ovulation cycles reduce the ovarian reserve? This is a very common question in our practice. All of us have met it before. And all of us, we don't really have the real answer. We might have an intuition, but we can't find a real answer or explanation in the literature. In this lecture here, I don't really have the answer. Okay? I'm just trying to put some facts for you, some historical facts actually, of well-established scientific data, and I'm trying to correlate this, and it's up to you to decide whether it has effect or not. So I'm taking some background notes in the form of facts. Fact number one, we all know that today's mature follicle has been cooking for a long time earlier, meaning that in women, in humans, folliculogenesis is a really slow process. It takes up to 300 days for a primordial follicle to turn from a primordial follicle stage to the mature Graafian follicle, which is almost a year. In this diagram here, it's a cartoon representation of the ovarian cortex. You can see the primordial follicles starting from the left here with the primordial, then the primary, then the secondary, then the preantral, which is starting to be classified as a class 1, then a class 2, class 3, and 4. All this period is up to 120 days, plus 65 days, and plus another 65 days. And then we start from the class 5, where the actual selection is going to start. And this, in this area here, where most of us, when we are starting a long protocol, we start to hit on these follicles. This is the mid-secretory phase of the preceding cycle for the IVF. And then ending with the class 8, which is the ovulatory one. In any given time, if you take a cut section of an ovary, we can find the ovary in different stages with different types of follicles. And in a broad sense, we can classify follicles into two main types. We owe this long time ago to Goujon in a very interesting study. He classified follicles into preantral and antral follicles. The preantral follicles, including namely the primordial follicles, the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary, and the antral, they include the small, the medium, the large, and then the pre-ovulatory class, which is going to be the mature Graafian follicle. A very interesting info here, a well-established knowledge that on this side here, this is totally gonadotropin independent. Whatever happens from the pituitary, whatever happens from the drugs we give, it's not affecting these things, these follicles here. And this period here, it lasts for up to 250 days. On the other side, on these follicles, yes, gonadotropin do have an effect. The development of these primordial follicles into the developed follicles is totally gonadotropin dependent. And of course, you should know that the dominant follicle appears to be selected from a cohort of class 5 follicles at the end of the luteal phase of the preceding menstrual cycle. Fact number 2, it's really different in her 20s than in the 30s and the 40s, meaning that whenever I'm, as a practitioner, a general gynecologist or an IVF specialist or infertility-oriented doctor, I'm prescribing any sort of drug for induction of ovulation for the patient, I should know that there is a bi-exponential decrease in ovarian reserve during aging, and the number of primordial follicles falls steadily for more than 3 decades. But once she reaches a critical number of about 25,000 follicles, which is usually on the average reached at the age of 37.5 years of age, the rate of loss of primordial follicles accelerates about 2-fold. So whenever I'm inducing and accelerating the process, I should be very cautious about what's left over. This is my reference here. It's a very interesting book. It's called The Ovary for Professor Gregory Erickson. I proudly have it, and it's a very interesting book. If any of you wish to have real knowledge about the ovary and the oogenesis, I recommend greatly this book. The fact number 3, what decides that the follicles that will be involved, which follicles will be involved in this cycle? Which means the recruitment. The recruitment is a totally pituitary independent procedure. It probably is controlled by autocrine and paracrine mechanisms. And whether it's affected by a stimulator, something is stimulating the ovary to recruit a group of follicles, or by simply removing an inhibitor signal, we don't really know. A very interesting study, and it was published in the Human Reproduction 1997, had proved or inclined towards rather the inhibitory theory rather than the stimulatory one, because they took the primordial follicles and they cultivated in vitro, and they noticed that these ones, once outside of the real ovarian tissue, outside the real ovarian environment and the body environment, they have gone into real rapid recruitment. It was estimated to be 7-fold as speedy as in the normal human body. Fact number 4, follicles are constantly dying. We get recruitment, we get growth and maturation, and the secondary follicles get cavitation, and then antrum formation, and then selection, and whether it's lucky getting to be the dominant ones, okay, they develop in the way of the ovulation. The other ones, they go to atresia through a programmed cell death program, which is the apoptosis. If we have a way to control or to accelerate or to reduce this apoptosis mechanism, then we are holding the key to control the rate the ovary is losing its reserve. Atresia is actually occurring in all follicles, the pre-antral and the antral, after the class 1 or secondary follicle stages. However, the incidence is seen in the antral follicles that are more than 2 millimeters in diameter, which are the class 5, 6, and 7. I will go rapidly through this because talking about this will consume a lot of time. Follicles are being consumed all the time. It has been proved that normal ovaries, even in childhood, show follicular growth at all ages. They exhibit actively growing, healthy and degenerating follicles in progressive stages of development with and without follicle fluid. And even some ovaries have shown follicular growth up to the pre-antral stage. This is from Peters et al., mentioned and published in the Acta Gynecologica in 1978, very long time ago. Fact 6, and this is the most important one, ovulation is actually a miniature burst of the ovarian cortex. Every month, the ovarian surface bursts, it explodes a bit to release the oocyte, and then this process has to heal. This burst has to heal and close itself back again. This is attained through the effect of proteolytic enzymes that help to disintegrate the follicle apex prior to the rupture. Using electron microscopy, the presence of specific granules simulating the lysosomes releasing proteolytic enzymes have been detected, and they are termed that they are the ovulation enzymes producers. This is a long time ago, again, study mentioned in cellular tissue research in 1976. I quote again the paper published in Cancer, a very prestigious one as well. I quote their words: microscopic inspection of the ovaries post-ovulation revealed various cytological and architectural anomalies, surface papillomatosis, epithelial inclusion cyst, nuclear pleomorphism, epithelial multilayering, and cortical invagination. The association of these different abnormalities was termed ovarian dysplasia. And I come to, proudly, our great Professor Fathallah, Professor Mahmoud Fathallah, and his Fathallah hypothesis in his phenomenal paper published in The Lancet in 1971, a very prestigious paper in which carried the name incessant ovulation, a factor in ovarian neoplasia. Yes, it's not the same case, but I can take, or I can quote the word, his words: the process of ovulation involves repeated minor trauma to the covering epithelium, as well as repeated exposure of the ovarian surface to the estrogen-rich viscous follicular fluid. Then the last fact is to correlate endometriosis. It is a similar scenario. Now it is proven and known that endometriosis results in the definite reduction of the ovarian reserve and is a direct independent predisposing factor to decreased ovarian reserve and premature ovarian failure. These are recent notes from 2016 and 2017. On a trial to explain this, ovarian endometriosis as an endometrioma residing under the surface of the ovary in the ovarian cortex, it will result in destruction of normal histological structures of the ovarian cortex. And this will get us in either one of two ways. Whether disturbed dormancy of the primordial follicles or florid acceleration of the follicular atresia through acceleration of the apoptosis mechanism. In the disturbance of the dormancy of the primordial follicles, it will result in a broader recruitment pool, resulting in exponential loss of the follicles, resulting in the known decline of the ovarian reserve in endometriosis patients. These patients are without a history of any surgical evacuation or by ovarian cystectomy. No, simply they just have endometriosis, and without any surgical intervention or iatrogenic factors, we find that they do have low ovarian reserve. What about in literature as standing facts? What we can really say is that since 2003, in current opinion of obstetric gynecology, there is a clear statement: at present, there is little indication that repeated cycles have a detrimental effect on ovarian function. Again, in 2005, they said the same fact, but they added that an explanation, that simply because when you are reducing ovulation, you're simply merely selecting one single dominant follicle, but we do not accelerate recruitment. So why would be ovarian stimulation reducing or consuming at an extra the ovarian reserve? Again, in 2005, repeated controlled ovarian hyperstimulation cycles in a donor population does not demonstrate a diminished ovarian response. This was the conclusion of a paper published in the American Journal of Obstetric Gynecology, done on donor cycles in IVF programs. In 2010, there appears to be certain limit in number. So, Luke and Arishi, they say, overall findings also show that there is no significant decline in ovarian reserve in patients who undergo up to 3 repeated in vitro fertilization cycles. And they add here, for patients undertaking more than 3 cycles, the results become equivocal because age becomes a detrimental factor. On the other way around, we don't really have studies to discuss the issue in humans, but I would like to draw your attention over these last 2 slides. This paper has been published in the Scientific Reports in 2016, and it has the title, Repeated Superovulation May Affect Mitochondrial Function of Cumulus Cells in Mice. They subjected mice to repeated cycles of ovarian stimulation and controlled ovarian hyperstimulation, and then they analyzed the ovaries in these mice, and they found that there is an aberrant response in the mitochondria, aberrant function and number in the mitochondria in the cells, in the cumulus cells which are surrounding the oocyte. And they concluded from this that the repeated ovulation does have a notorious effect on the ovarian reserve over the long term. The other paper is published in the Fertility Sterility in 2014, long-term effects of repeated superovulation on ovarian structure and function in rhesus monkeys. Controlled ovarian hyperstimulation could change the expression of many proteins, I quote from their conclusion, in the ovaries even after several years, potentially affecting the development and function of ovarian cells. Where are we standing? It's for you to choose. We now know that research works are largely insufficient to answer the question. Evidence and published data on humans, though limited, they all declare ovarian stimulation as innocent from the charge of reducing ovarian reserve. However, logic thinking and clinical observations might seem going the opposite way. However, certain points are to be considered in order to be safe and prudent. First one, the history of the previous cycles of ovulation induction should be known in details as much as possible, and I would like to add and proper counseling prior to any cycle, as beautifully illustrated by my friend and colleague Dr. Ahmed. It should be greatly emphasized before starting any cycle of induction of ovulation, not just prior to IVF, but prior to any induction of ovulation in our regular practice, because we all practice and we all know that we can give easily drugs for induction of ovulation to our patients, and these patients already, when they reach us, they already have done several cycles on their own. They went to the pharmacy, they bought their medication, they bought the clomiphene, they bought the Femara, they bought whatever they can buy, and they received their own treatment based on recommendation from a friend or from a pharmacist. And then when they come to us, we should have put in consideration these previous cycles. We should have counted them and know for how long this patient has been exposed to induction. Always take care of the patient's age. This has a great important impact on the success rate and on her ovarian reserve. Giving induction of ovulation to a patient who is 22 years old is different from giving induction of ovulation to a patient who is 37 years old. And also, always stick, as beautifully illustrated as well, Professor Sru's lecture in the morning, always stick to the evidence base. Evidence-based knowledge, do not improvise a lot. Yes, we can improvise. Yes, we can make mixtures of this drug and this drug. We can make a mixture of tablets and injectables, but we should always stick to the well-recognized bodies that have well-recognized protocols of induction in order not to make the patient, cost the patient a lot of her reserve, which is more expensive than money and time. Also, indications for ovulation induction should always be respected, and the practice of haphazard stimulation should be abundant. We should thoroughly investigate our patients and know well that they do have a defect in ovulation, and then we start inducing this ovulation. Thank you very much.